afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It is a pleasure to be here today and to welcome our guest speaker. This is our 4th annual Leadership Lecture Series. And this lecture series is an event that Columbus State Community College offers each autumn quarter. And the series affords us the opportunity to hear firsthand from visible leaders in a wide variety of areas. It is what blends the learning that you have in the classroom, the concepts that you learn, with real-life situations. And when you want to hear from real-life situations, who better to come and tell that other than those who are living in the business world or in other areas that they do and that work every day. From these lectures, we hope that you will get some nuggets of insight into what is happening in the field of business, and that information will help you be informed about the career that you have chosen for yourself. We today have with us Mr. Ron Greenbaum, and I'm not going to introduce him, but I want to thank him for coming and also for bringing with him his lovely wife, Terry Greenbaum. I think she is in the audience. Are you there? And so we want to welcome to our campus, and now to introduce him, I'm going to have our faculty member, Chuck Foley, come.
Thank you, Dr. Muller, for your comments, and welcome everybody here, all the students and invited guests, administration. We're happy to have everybody here. As Val mentioned, hopefully when you listen to these comments, there'll be a few nuggets anytime you hear somebody speak that hopefully you can take away and use in your own, as you adapt in your own careers, your own lives. So we're happy today to have Ron Greenbaum, who many of you probably have seen or heard as the basement doctor. And if you're taking marketing or advertising, one of the things you're going to hear a lot about or have heard about in your classes is the importance of a brand. And sometimes the face and the brand go together. You saw that with Wendy's and Dick Thomas. You've seen that with Walt Disney. And I think here in the area of Ohio, most of us have seen Ron Greenbaum. And not the kind of guy you want to have commit a bank robbery, because they're probably going to be saying, I know that guy somewhere, we've seen him before. So Ron Greenbaum is known as a basement doctor. It's an important brand, well known throughout the 5 states. And the lessons I think that Ron is going to be able to share with you, just a few of the things, and I'm sure he's going to share many concepts, but the importance of being an entrepreneur. Many of you have aspirations of being an entrepreneur, working in your own small business, and how do you start, where do you start? That's not an easy question, so those things are key. He'll share with you leadership and motivation. How do you motivate people? We talk about that in our management classes. You know, what is motivation? It's not an easy thing to do, and hopefully Ron can share some of those comments as well. In this speech, we're talking to Ron. He says, "Hey, you're asking me to compress 40 years into 40 minutes." Basically, that's what we're asking him to do, so we'll see how that goes. One of the things that impressed me in talking to Ron and seeing some of his comments is the importance of negotiation and also communication. And I know everybody in business and most of the disciplines here today, most of you have to take it, I shouldn't say have to take, should take a class in communication or speech and also negotiation. And I think you'll hear, that's not because we're just trying to jam hours down your throat. You see the importance of that as you hear Ron talk today. Ron is very active with Nationwide Children's Hospital as a supporter. He's also involved with the Humane Action Animal Shelter and is a board member of the Victor Weinstein Shalom House in Heritage Village. And as Dr. Mulder mentioned, his wife Terry is here today, so welcome her as well. They've been married 23 years.
Rule number 1, don't take yourself very seriously, because if you do, you're in trouble. That was a lot of fun. Obviously, it's not the holidays right now, but happy holidays anyway. I'm Ron Greenbaum. I am known as the Basement Doctor. Can everybody hear me? You know, it's always interesting. Typically, even at our own meetings, we have a lot of meetings at my company. We do a lot of training, and people take the same seats all the time. I don't know if you come to a lot of different seminars and hear speakers or come into this room, but I'd like to someday take a poll and see how many people actually sit in the same seat every time. The same guys always sit in the back of the room. Same people, you know, sit. I have a sales meeting. The salespeople have their seats, and if there's a new salesman that's involved, if you take their seat, you're in big trouble. So anyway, they call it the blooper reel, and the blooper reel takes the place of, you know, they say you're supposed to start a discussion with some humor or something like that, and I've heard like, well, I flew in here to speak to you today, and I'm really tired, you know, those kinds of things. So that was my joke. And I hope people, I enjoy it. And again, because it's kind of laughing at myself, because you can't take yourself too seriously. They asked me to talk about leadership today. I did my thank yous as to the people that invited me and a little lunch. And again, I appreciate the lunch and thank everybody again. But as Chuck said, 40 years and really more than that in 40 minutes is kind of tough to do. So I'll try not to rush through this because, again, there might be some things. I've realized this a long time ago. Whether I speak to people at my organization or that actually I write the paycheck for or whatever, some people get it, some people don't. Some people like what I have to say, some people don't. Some people write things down. I'll tell you a little story about writing things down. I heard a rumor that some of you were kind of getting extra credit for coming to see me. There were a lot of bribes going on to get people here, which, you know, I'm all about bribes. In fact, before I heard that, I was going to give away 2 Ohio State football tickets to people that might come, you know, to see me. So I understand bribes. You know, most of you learned how to go to the bathroom because of some M&Ms. So bribes are, I know my kids did, so bribes are an important thing. So that doesn't bother me. But again, we're here to talk about leadership. And, you know, I belong to a lot of think tanks. You know, I correspond, I get a lot of emails, I talk to people, and I get emails all the time. And one of the things, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with McKinsey. They're a research and think tank. And I got something, and it was really kind of funny how things happen when you need them. And I was racking my brain for about 2 minutes as to how I was going to talk about leadership, and this showed up on the email. And so it said, centered leadership through the crisis. And practicing each dimension of the centered leadership model is linked to higher levels of personal and professional satisfaction. Well, after I read through the next 2 paragraphs, I wrote on there, and I don't know if you can see this, but it says, this is big. This is big. By the way, if I say something more than once, it's because, you know, it's something that I really believe in. And my people know that when I say something more than once, most of the time they need to write it down. Let me tell you about writing things down. I was asked to speak to my peers at a convention here about 5 years ago. And I belong to a network of about 365 waterproofing and structural repair contractors. And they asked me to come up and talk about sales or something. And they also had 3 or 4 other speakers, and I think I was the 4th one in line. And I sat there and I looked around the audience. These are business owners, salespeople, marketing people. There were about 700 people in the audience. Well, after the first speaker, I got up and I said, you know what? These people have come a long way to speak to you. These people have a lot of great things to say. I cannot believe how few of you are writing anything down. And that's a concept that I have. It's called set the table so you can eat. And I'll explain what that means here in a second, because it's part of leadership. I think leadership is very important, but you sometimes have to set the table for leadership. Well, they went through the next couple speakers. It's my turn to talk. You know the wave in the stadium when, you know, everybody lifts their arms? Well, when it was my turn to talk, there was a wave of briefcases being opened, and people putting a pen in their hand, and they were writing down what I had to say because I had chastised fellow business people, everybody else, because I do believe it's important. I believe that if somebody is, whether they're getting paid, not getting, whatever, there's always something. So I always make it a point to bring a pen and a piece of paper with me when I go in to talk to anybody at my company, because there might be some, and if I don't have one, I ask them for one, and I say, you know what, I need a pen and a piece of paper, because what you just said, that's really good. Let's write it down. Because if you, I don't care who you are, I'm 57 years old, I can't remember, you know, where my coffee cup is in the morning. So, you know, you don't remember things. So I think writing things down is very important. But so, you know, again, that's all about setting the table so you can eat, and it's part of leadership. This is big. Leaders who master the art of leading from their core, using several dimensions of the model called centered leadership, are likelier than others to be passionate about their work, effective as leaders, satisfied with their lives. That was a survey they did of 1,000 very successful CEOs and company leaders. Centered leadership, a leadership model that was developed after they found that out. They developed that model. McKinsey developed it over the last 5 years. It comprises 5 broad dimensions: meaning or finding your strengths, putting them to work in the service of a purpose that inspires you, positive framing, or adapting a more constructive way to view your world and handle situations. By the way, I'm going to put this into real language here in a minute. And even very difficult situations, or connecting and building stronger support networks, increase your sense of belonging, engaging or crossing the line to pursue opportunities you might avoid. In other words, taking risks because it is an inherent risk, and managing your energy, and always practice ways to sustain and renew your energy. Okay, what does all that mean? I mean, when I first read it, I had to read it about 3 times to really figure out what the heck that meant. And what I figured out was that they were talking about me. I really believed they were talking about me. And the reason is because leaders that know who they are, leaders that have a sense of beliefs, leaders that have intrinsic motivation and don't sacrifice or don't give in, I guess, to the outside world or to things that they don't think are right just for the almighty dollar. I think those are the most effective leaders there are. So, you know, it starts with a belief system. That's what leaders have. They have a belief system. And that belief system will always give them the answers they need. So you asked me to talk about leadership, so I'm going to tell you what I believe in, okay? Because that's why, if people say to me, Ron, you're a successful entrepreneur, you're a successful leader, you can motivate people, why? It's because of what's inside of me, okay? I believe this. I believe that CEO stands for Chief Education Officer. I think you have to constantly be training people, okay? By the way, this is not up in the PowerPoint. I decided to do this part on the treadmill this morning because I believe that you can always change what you're going to do, okay? So again, I believe the CEO stands for Chief Education Officer. I believe you can't do it all yourself. You must have a team. I believe in hiring nice, honest, intelligent people. And we're going to talk more about that in the PowerPoint. I believe in using the word we as much as possible when I refer to my company, okay? I believe this is a biggie. I believe a risk is jumping off, my definition of a risk is jumping off a cliff and growing your wings on the way down. And I get you in trouble sometimes, but more times than not, I've been able to grow those wings, okay? I believe that people deserve a second chance, but not usually a third, okay? I believe in second chances, but not usually a third, okay? I believe confidence is one of your most important success ingredients. Confidence, I'm a confident person. I always have been. And even if I'm not confident, people think I'm confident. And I think that you have to be if you're going to be successful. I believe in throwing people in the deep end and seeing if they can swim. But always have a life preserver ready in case they can't. So if I hire somebody, I'm going to give them something. I'm going to see what they can do for me. I hired them to maybe do one thing, but if they show me they can do that, then I might give them something else. And then, again, I'm prepared. I understand it. They sometimes come to me and say, oh, my God, I don't know what to do. I'm overworked. I can't do this. Or what, maybe they don't manage their time effectively or whatever. I'll help them because that's what I believe, again, the CEO is supposed to do. I'll train them, okay? I believe in family despite the fact that I grew up as an orphan, okay? I believe that I believe that in business, people are usually the problem, your employees. I believe that's usually a source of a lot of the problem, but I also believe they're the solution. I believe they're the solution. I believe in hard work, period. Period, period, period. I believe in hard work, okay? I believe in enjoying life. Having said that, I also believe in enjoying life. I believe in the concept of rooting where you're planted. In other words, don't have one eye on the one end all the time. Go somewhere, you accepted a position, stay there. Root where you're planted, okay? I believe that everything is negotiable. I mean, that's a biggie. I believe everything is negotiable, okay? I believe in written agreements, but I also believe your word is your bond. I believe in written agreements, but word is your bond. I believe in women's intuition. I believe my wife is usually right, except when she's wrong. Okay? In education, I believe in education despite the fact that I'm a college dropout. Okay, and I'll explain that in the presentation here. I believe in living my life with the perspective that when faced with an insurmountable problem, that how in the world could you, there's no way we can solve this problem. I believe, if that's the case, I believe in the philosophy of this too shall pass. I believe no matter what the problem is, it will pass. It's really not an insurmountable problem. If you can find a solution. I believe in faith in a higher being, but I'm rarely in favor of organized religion. I believe, again, in faith in a higher being, because faith is the ability to believe when you have no reason to. Faith is the ability to believe when you have no reason to. That's what I think my definition of faith is. And I think it starts with who you are and, again, I could have a whole meeting about how I feel about organized religion, but that's a whole other program, okay? I believe in making profits, but not on the backs of my employees. Neil, you're probably happy to hear that, aren't you? Eric, our great controller. By the way, the best move we've made as a company in years is marrying the husband of one of your faculty here, Neil, and he's been great. So again, I believe in giving credit where credit's due. So Neil, your book out has been fabulous, okay? I believe in team leaders, not managers. People need to manage themselves. I believe in giving training, but I believe people train themselves. This is a biggie with me. You'll see that. It's a biggie. Train yourselves. Don't blame somebody. Don't say, I didn't get enough training. I tell my daughter, I have a 22-year-old daughter that's going through a lot of the same thing that some of you are. And she's out there now thinking about looking for a job. And, she told me once a story about a professor that was a math teacher, and all he did, he turned to the blackboard and he was writing like this, and he didn't answer questions, and frankly, he didn't speak English too well. And she was blaming him. Oh, Dad, I might get a B. She's like her father, and she wants those A's. But she said, I might get a B. I might even do worse than that. I said, Betsy, what's the problem? He said, well, he's not teaching me the right way. Well, guess what? That's her fault, not that. That's what he does. That's what he's taught. That's what he was hired to do. She needed to find a solution to the problem. So if you feel that way, solve the problem. There's a million. I could give you, if you ask me how to solve that problem, I'll give you 20 ways to solve a problem like that. Pick them. Pick one. But that's what you need to do. And if you work for my organization and you get out in the real world and work, you're going to be faced with those kinds of problems. Because I'm going to ask you to do projects. I'm going to ask you to save me money. I'm going to ask you to negotiate. I'm going to ask you what something costs. And don't tell me, well, I gave it to the purchasing department and they are going to get the best price. I just had a discussion at lunch about that. You know, I want to know certain things. And one thing I want to know, in this day and age, it's very, very hard to make a profit. I don't care whose business you have. The only people making a profit today are the banks that got the bailouts. And that's, again, I'm not here to talk politics, but that's the reality of the situation. Some of the most profitable companies in this country have folded. Some of the most profitable companies in Columbus, Ohio have folded. And you wouldn't have dreamt it. Or if they haven't folded, they should. And most of the banks that took the money, they should have. They're dinosaurs. They should have let them go the way of the dinosaur. It's ridiculous. But having said that, I can't control that. What I can control is who I support. One of those banks, we are totally, and Neil will tell you this, we're divesting ourselves of that bank because we don't believe in their business practices any longer. And if you swim with the big sharks, you're going to get bit, and they try to bite us a little bit. But guess what? We're not going to put up with it. And that's what leaders do. They make those kinds of decisions. You know, I have a business partner who said to me one day, Tom Johnston, who's been a great influence on me. He's the senior partner at the company, and we'll talk about him a little bit. But he once said to me, I don't care if that person had an Uzi. It was over a business transaction. So that person had an Uzi machine gun. I wouldn't put up with that. He's an ex-Marine, and he wouldn't do it. And I said, Tom, that's the difference between me and you. I'm not an ex-Marine. If he had an Uzi, I'd figure out a way to do this a little differently. But that's why we're good partners, because I gave, you know, at that particular, normally he calms me down, but I calmed him down. So again, I believe in making profits, but not on the backs of my employees. I believe in team leaders, not managers. I believe people manage themselves. I believe in myself and my ability to communicate. I think that's an important part of being a leader. You must be able to communicate, because what you have to communicate is your vision. It can't be a whole bunch of visions if you're a leader. You can have people that help you, that share the vision and things like that, but if you're the leader, you must have the vision and you must communicate it, and communication is mostly, in my opinion, today, nonverbal. So you must be able to write it, to tweet it, to Facebook it, to put it on the internet. You must know technology. It's a different world out there. If you're not accepting that, if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to get very far. My job, and I take this very seriously, here's my job as a leader at my organization and as a father and a husband, is to motivate people to do what they may not want to do despite themselves, because it's in their best interest. I'm going to say that again because it's a long sentence, but again, this is what I believe as a leader I need to do. I need to, as a leader, motivate people to do what they may not want to do despite themselves, because it's in their best interest. My biggest challenge as a business person today, my biggest challenge is to remove negativism, remove indecision, remove inactivity, because that's what happens. People get frozen. They become deer in headlights. They hear all this bad news. They don't want to move ahead. They don't want to, oh, Ron, what did you do? You bought a building. Ron, you bought another company. You invested $1 million. Right? You know, guess what? How are we going to get from point A to point B if we don't do that? Now is the time to do that. Now's the time not to sit back, as some of my fellow waterproofing and structural companies, because it's hard to grow it back. The concept is real simple. If you take one step backward, you have to take 2 steps forward to get 1 step ahead. So if you take 1 step backward and you're only taking 1 step forward, you're in trouble, aren't you? So you need to understand that. You can't afford to go back. Business is not about going backwards. Business is cyclical. You need to make sure you do the right things. But, I've come in to talk to my controller, Neil, concerned about cash flow, concerned about, you know what, he's an expert. He says, Ron, you don't need to worry. Go make some more money. Go sell something. Go do something. Go motivate the other people. I got it under control. Because he does. Because I trust him. Why should you trust somebody? You should trust somebody because they're honest with you. That's when you start trusting people. He's honest. He would have told me the otherwise. But, so again, it's about leadership. Sometimes it's about letting people, and not sometimes, it's always about letting people do their job, but go in and ask. Don't just assume that he's going to tell you if your checks aren't going to be any good. Now, again, the longer, it doesn't matter how long you're in business. The Better Business Bureau here in Columbus, they have a scoring system now, A through F. And it's baffling to me. It's baffling because there's some people, that I've looked up on there that have an A minus that, just to give you an example, in the last 3 years, we've won the Better Business Bureau Integrity Award, and we had no complaints. All of a sudden, we got one complaint. One complaint. Now, you got to realize that I do a couple thousand jobs just here in Central Ohio every year. I've done about 30,000 jobs, more than that. It's a lot of people, a lot of jobs. We've won the Integrity Award. We've won the Consumer's Choice Award 11 out of the last 12 years because they didn't give it in our category the first year. So the point is, I look at this and I see another company. I have one complaint. They have 29. I have an A. They have an A minus. Now, is that fair? No, I don't think it's fair. Why? Because they've been in business a long time. Well, every 3 years they kind of adjust the till. I remember looking at that same company a number of years ago and they had 100 complaints. So have they gotten better? Sure. Do they deserve an A minus? Not in my opinion. Sometimes you get bad grades. Sometimes somebody else will get a good grade and you think you should have. It's subjective. And that's something I'm going to talk about because in my company, I try not to make it subjective. I try to make it so that we have key performance indicators and return on investment indicators and things like that. So that takes the emotion out of how you're doing because it's right there. We tell you what we expect. If you don't do it, then, it's in black and white. You've agreed to that. So, I could go on all day about my belief system, but I've only got 40 minutes. Now I've only got about 25 minutes to cover 40 years. So I'm going to start with the PowerPoint presentation. And I hope at the end that people do have some questions for me. I'm going to start out by answering real quickly one of the questions on the sheet. They were talking about me and the purpose of why I'm here today and all my, it's probably one of the few times in the last 10 or 12 years that somebody ran a picture of me without a hat. And I had a lot of people call me say, wow, that's a good picture you're on. So, I'm still look the same. But the first question was, were there any catalysts, people, or events that were important shaping your career? And I think probably the number one thing was losing my parents at an early age. It's 57 years old, it's a long time ago, but I think that was probably the most important thing that ever happened to me. The second was meeting my current wife, my lovely wife, who, I say current, I had a bad one before, but this has been beyond, people say that they have good marriages. I know I have a great marriage, and I'll say it to everybody. Not just because I'd say it if she was. In fact, I would tell way more stories about her, and that's why she came, okay? Another person that helped shape me was, I was in a foster home and wasn't doing too well, and I had a big brother that kind of is still alive today in Cleveland. I'm originally from Cleveland, and he helped me. And then I have a current business partner named Tom Johnston, and he's been a real mentor, a friend, and I get emotional thinking about all these people, but those people have helped me. So you always have people that you can look back and they help you get to where you are, and you need to remember those kinds of things. So we're going to talk about leadership. I'm going to go through this sort of quick because I took so much time in talking about our beliefs. But guess what? When I analyzed what I was in practice of, the one time I actually went through this and with Eric, I said, we're not talking enough about leadership, but don't worry. I'll figure it out. And on the treadmill this morning, I pretty much wrote everything that I've said to this point. So I reserve the right to do that. You need to have, in business today, you have to have an elevator speech. Okay, if you're going to be no matter what business you have, it's amazing. If I called, if somebody owns, does anybody here own a business that wants to say anything? Okay, so you don't want to talk. Who wants to talk? Just I'm going to make, anybody here, first of all, if you're going to own a business and you don't want to talk about it, that's not a good thing. It really isn't, because that's what true marketing is. Sure, nobody? Okay, well, okay, did you say you would? Okay, get up and tell me about who you are and what your business is.
My brother and I are trying to start a food vending business. We're having cash flow problems. But we want to start like a vending business, like off like a trail, much like the one that's sitting over here in the court.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Okay, so you know what he wants to do, right? Okay. Here's what I would say. I would say, first of all, what kind of food do you want to sell? Where do you want to have your location? What's your goal? What are some of your goals? Things like that, if you haven't already started a business. Let me tell you my elevator, and why I think it's important to have one is because if you're in a business, I heard a woman give what's called the elevator speech at a seminar here a couple of weeks ago in Columbus, and she said, my name is Mary so-and-so, and I have 1,000 customers, and I do networking, and sat down, basically. Well, I have 100,000 customers, okay. Well, she didn't really tell me much about anything. If somebody, and they did a survey and they said, if you filled a stadium with 100,000 business owners, less than 5% would be able within 30 seconds to tell you what they did. These are owners of companies, businesses, and they statistically prove this. I'm all about numbers because I'm a marketing guy, and if you're going to be a marketing guy, you better honey, I'm politically correct, marketing person, then you better understand numbers. So, my elevator speech is real quick. It's, hi, I'm Ron Greenbaum, the basement doctor. I've been involved in basement waterproofing, structural repair for 25 years. I've won numerous awards. I give award-winning products and services. I serve a 5-state area. My corporate office is in Columbus, Ohio. And if you have a problem with your basement, mold, cracked wall, then call me today at 877-DRY-TIME, and I'll be glad to help you. Now, I could add a few, that was probably my 15th second, and I didn't practice it, but that's what you want to say. You want to be able to tell people who you are. Tell them where the goat is. The first true form of marketing was somebody saying, hey, I want to buy a goat. Well, somebody walked down the street and said, where do I get a goat? Well, you better have somebody that says, that's the guy that sells the best goats in town. That's what marketing is. It's just telling people about things. They've made it fancy. They've made it sophisticated. They've made it all kinds of things. But the reality is, get your message out. I've won awards for marketing. Why? Because I simply get on and tell people what I do. Hi, I'm Ron Greenbaum, the basement doctor for a drier, cleaner, healthier home. Call me today. That's my 5-second one. You got it, right? You understand? The phone number, if I don't have time, I'll put the phone number in writing. That's really that simple. So know your elevator speech. Let me tell you about my life. My wife said, you got to tell them about your life, so I'm going to tell you about my life. Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio with my grandmother, my father and mother and brother in a 2-bedroom house in the inner city of Cleveland. When a lot of people were starting to move into suburban Cleveland, we were in the inner city. At the age of 3, my brother's 4 years older than me. His name is Barney. Some of you might know him, Barney Greenbaum. He's been an entrepreneur as well in the city. And at the age of 3, my grandmother put me on a school bus. And because she said, well, he talks and he walks and he's everything. So she's a Russian immigrant. And my father, oh, by the way, she threw my father out because she thought he was a bum. So she threw him out and she put me on a school bus. And at the age of 3, well, they sent me home with a note saying, too young. Okay? So what did my grandmother do? Well, at the age of 4, she sent me back. Guess what? They kept me. So I started school when I was 4 years old. And my grandmother, then my mother got sick and was put in a convalescent home and died shortly after that. But, you know, everybody's got a sad story, in my opinion, and really that doesn't really make a total difference, but it does make a difference in who I am. And at the age of 7, I was put into a foster home, and with some people that really needed the money. At the time, I think they were getting $50 a week for me and my $50 each or whatever, and they needed the money. And when they had their own children, we became expendable free labor for painting their house and doing things like that. So that didn't work out real well. And so I moved in with a friend of mine across, literally almost across the street from where I was living. And I made the mistake of picking up his girlfriend, and he broke up with his girlfriend, so they threw me out of that. So they put me into a group home at that point. I was 14 years old, and at the age of 15, I said, this isn't working either, and I went to the state of Ohio and I applied for emancipation, and I became emancipated at the age of 15. In the meantime, I had a number of different jobs. I was a stock boy at which is now CVS, a Revco drugstore. I worked the night shift. After high school, I would go there and work till midnight. Sometimes I would start at midnight and work till 6 o'clock in the morning. But again, that's me. You know, one other job I had was, watering flowers for 15 cents. And that was really my first job. My brother worked as a salesperson at a florist. And we each took 2 buses, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning in the summer and worked. Again, that's how I started my career. So at the age of 16, I actually graduated from high school because I did start early, plus I think I got ahead somehow. I don't know how that. So at the age of 16, I graduated from high school and went to Cuyahoga Community College, a community college in Cleveland. Was there for a half a year, saved up enough money working in the evenings at a men's store selling, and went to Kent State. And I liked acting and drama, so I became a drama major. Well, they told me I don't have any talent, okay? Now, here I am. I'm on TV way more than any of those people in those classes. I star in my own, half hour, an hour, infomercials and things like that, so I've learned to do that. Didn't like that. Figured, okay, they're right. Took a few business courses, sort of like business, but my brother opened the first vegetarian restaurant really here in Columbus, one of the biggest ones in the country called Seva, which was on the northern part of Columbus. Came here, had multiple careers, sold novelty. You probably read it. Some of you may have read it. Actually managed rock and roll bands. Had a real good friend that I knew from high school, Mark Sternberger. He's an attorney in Pittsburgh now, but he was in the entertainment business, so together we got involved. I think the local band you might know is one called McGuffey Lane. Some of you, maybe old-timers, or even, they're still playing around town. They're not, and I produced their first record, got them a record contract, and anyway, I got involved in promoting concerts, both regionally and locally, and then I met my wife. And my wife said, you know what? I'm getting pregnant, we're going to have a family, and you're getting out of that business. And I learned a long time ago I could have a wife or a happy wife, and I chose the happy wife. So I got involved then in the construction business. Her dad had been in the construction business, and I got involved in the construction business, met my partner, and after a stint with what's now a competitor of mine, learned how not to do it, and here I am, 23 years after being married, and that's who I am. That's the Reader's Digest version, and I'm going to move ahead. So that's who I am. If you want to manage or lead a business, you must have a solid and unshakable understanding of who you are and where you want to go. That's known as the vision, okay? At the Basement Doctor organization, we have a formula for success. It's been developed over the 23 years, and it's our roadmap. It started before I was even there. My partner first started it, and it helps guides our everyday. And here it is. This is big. This is another one of those biggies. It's a formula for success. I believe, while business is not a science, there are formulas that work, and this is a big formula. And that is opportunity. There is an opportunity. If you're in business, there's always an opportunity. The question is, what's your skill level? to take advantage of that. What kind of either education have you had? What kind of experience you have? What kind of, how can you take advantage of that opportunity? But above all else, what's your attitude like? What is your attitude? I had no question in my attitude today was I was going to come and I was going to give people the benefit of who I am. And you know what? I don't know necessarily at this point. I mean, you always find out afterwards, but I still have a great attitude here. How's your attitude? I mean, it's funny because I've heard professional speakers speak, and I've seen people leave by the droves. I actually haven't seen any. I've seen people come in, but I haven't seen them leave. That's usually a good sign, unless you're either making a lot of money or getting a lot of credit for being here. But my attitude is still to plug ahead. I'll get through this. But, formulas change, and we've changed ours. And what we found out was that it wasn't just the attitude, but you must also, and another word for attitude is what? Enthusiasm. And on my door, one day, this appeared. It was a poster, and it said, Ron Greenbaum, a guy holding up his hand. It wasn't even me, but it was somebody holding up his hand. And it said, Ron Greenbaum, the minister of enthusiasm. That's been there for 10, 12 years. That's what my employees think. And then a couple years later, they put a smiley face on it. They didn't just say it was a minister of enthusiasm. They put a smiley face on it. Okay, so that's how some people feel about me. But what I found, and again, I do have passion, but you must have that passion. I can't be passionate for everybody that works at my company. I can't be. The front line of your company affects the bottom line. If you're in business, this is a biggie. This is huge. This is monstrous. The front line of a company affects the bottom line, the people that are out there representing you. And we found out the hard way, and I'm about to show you that here in a minute. But today, a worker, somebody that comes and takes a job, must be flexible. You must, and the way I asked a couple people, tell me about flexibility. How do you feel you need to be flexible? And what they said to me was, Ron, if a truck pulls in the loading dock and it needs to be unloaded, we unload it. If the floor needs to be swept, I'll sweep it. Somebody told me a story about somebody that works at a very big company that went to their boss and said, you know what, if you need somebody to empty the trash cans, if you need somebody to sweep the floor, if you need somebody to wash the windows, please keep me in mind if you're going to downsize because I desperately need this job. That's the way the world is today, folks. That's the way the world is. You better be ready for it. You better be used to it. Some people here said, how's your business? I said, we're doing pretty good. Are we doing great? No, but great to us is way better than most companies. And Neil will tell you that. Great, we outperform our industry. This is considered a C marketing city, Columbus, and we always perform with the A players. When we go to conventions, we get awards that people that live in Chicago with 8 million people, I'm talking sales awards in Boston, and that's how we measure things. I don't care if this is a C market. That doesn't even enter my mind. But the point is that, it's harder and harder. So you must have people that are flexible. You must have people that are willing to train themselves, do whatever is necessary, because without that, every day is a challenge. Let me tell you again the history of, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. In 1992, as I mentioned, I got married, was still in the rock and roll business for a while, and then met my partner and was a salesman with him for a while, knowing going in that I was going to buy a part of the company. He had a couple of other partners, and again, I bought them out, and he and I are the sole owners of the company. Well, what I'm really good at is selling, training people, recruiting people, and marketing. And I mean, I'm really good at it. So in 1992, there was about a 4-year-old company before I started there, and they were doing combined sales was about $2 million, not even that, $1.5 million in those 4 or 5 years. Well, the first year I was there in 1992, I increased sales to $2 million. I thought, oh, this is a cakewalk. In 1993, I opened an office in Dayton, Ohio, increased sales to $4 million. In 1994, opened in Lima, Ohio, and Mansfield, Ohio, and increased sales to $7 million. Well, go from 0 to 7, or from 1 to 7 in 3 years, that's a pretty strong accomplishment. And back then it was a little easier to do, I will admit that, but really it was to be able to recruit people that knew how to sell and then train them and work with them and do the right marketing and spend the money. Well, sales and marketing were great, but then the bank, we had bought a big building, which we now own today, and 5 acres of land. The bank came in and said, guess what? We're calling in all your loans. Your line of credit, which at the time was, I think, $60,000. Not today, we spend that in a day. I mean, I hate to say that, but we do. But back then, that was an amazing amount of money. And anyway, that was bad, okay? And I asked why, and they said, well, you're not meeting. And that's why, frankly, I do not like bankers. I mean, maybe some bankers in here, but I don't like them because, you know, I didn't like them then. I really didn't like them after this guy. And this guy no longer is working in the banking industry, and I knew he wouldn't. And he said, Ron, you've got that money yourself. You know, your wife has an inheritance, blah, blah, blah. Pay us off, all this. I said, don't worry, you'll get paid. I said, just get the hell out of my office. And I said that to him. Well, then I really started looking at the books. I was looking at the sales and marketing. My partner was looking at the other things. And I went in, and we didn't have a controller at the time. Our books were not what they are today. I found out we were losing $1,000 a day. Why? Well, we expanded too quickly. We had no systems. We had no training. We had no accountability. I neglected managing the growth, and I neglected one thing. Really neglected it, customer service. We were doing way too much work. That's why we weren't getting paid, we weren't doing the work right. Yeah, we were doing a lot of jobs, but we were not basing the company on customer service. And you're in the service industry, folks, that is the biggest mistake you can make. We deserve, really, to go out of business because of how we were doing things. Well, how did we stay in business? Because obviously, I'm the basement doctor, and we're in business and doing quite well. Well, the first thing I do is, like I always do, is I take a couple deep breaths and say, well, there's a way to, this too shall pass. And I went home and I said hi to my wife, gave her a kiss, and said, I'm going down in the basement to watch a football game. And I did. Then I spent a little time analyzing the problem. I bet with my business partner, and he said, oh, things are doom and gloom. And I said, Tom, let me tell you something. You may think they are, but here's the way we're in a little bit of a fog, but I see a gorgeous desert island on the other side of this fog. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I created the problem. I'll take care of it. So what did I do? I communicated the problem to all the associates. I formed a panel, brainstormed the solutions. I hired a facilitator, a friend of mine who worked with companies that were in trouble, and I told her, let's put this plan in writing. And after meeting with people and figuring out what the problems were, and most of them were communication problems, and also not having the right people, we put the plan in writing. I created the plan. And the plan, this is from July of 1995. There's the date that it was written. We want to build on our prior successes. We did have happy customers. We wanted to make sure those customers stayed happy and take care of all the customers that weren't, okay? We designed an organizational structure. We put it in writing. We established a practical and practiced fiscal response. We stopped spending money because we really didn't have it. We thought we did. I had a telemarketing department at the time. And by the way, that year we went through 80 employees. We had 130 still employed, but 80 additional people. So over 210 people got a paycheck from us in that year. And then we utilized the principles, which I hope you're learning here, of total quality management. We cut our overhead, which today is the same way. We trimmed employees, but we didn't do it the way a lot of companies are. We have trimmed no employees, despite the fact that our volume is slightly down. We have trimmed, in fact, we've hired people, because we feel that we need to give better customer service than we ever did. So, we increased our accounting department because we offered we found other ways to make money besides direct services. One of the things we found out was that salespeople were not selling properly, so we got rid of them. And this is also a biggie, and I hope you're listening to this out there in the audience. We instituted a drug-free workplace before. Now, a lot of companies do, except in my industry. Construction still doesn't, but most industries do. So we have a drug-free workplace. When people said, Ron, you're not going to be able to hire anybody, because that's the reputation of the construction industry. We required valid driver's licenses. And my partner said that, he ran the construction side, he said that's what we're going to do, and we still do today. We became a pay-for-performance production company. We got rid of the dead weight. We found modern solutions. So where a job used to take us 5 days to do with, 5 people, we found technology that allowed us to do that same job in 1 or 2 days with 3 people. So we found the solutions. We went out to the world, because the job of the CEO is also to go out, and the president and the owners of a company, you need to go out in the world and find solutions and bring them back to your company. That's what we did. We reserved the right, as we do today, to get smarter. And this is all since 1995. Every year, every month, every day, this is what we practice. And do we get it right all the time? Absolutely not. But more times than not, we do. We perform at a higher level than most companies do. And the bank told, in 2007, one of the major banks, who we don't like anymore, but they came in and they said, you are way outperforming the construction industry, and we know that. And we talked to people from the Columbus Dispatch that surveyed the city and said, you have a customer satisfaction rate that's higher than any company in the entire city. You have a market share that's higher than any company in the city. We had a 67% market share at that particular time. I believe today it's higher. Why? Because we learned from our mistakes, and that's what you need to do. You need to learn from your mistakes. You know, let's talk about job interview. How much time do I have, Eric? Have I already exceeded it? Okay, do I have time to just do this real quick? Okay, 2 minutes. In a job interview, I set the table. The job seeker I have to get emotionally involved with the job seeker. Resumes, it says here resumes don't mean a lot to me. Well, they do mean somewhat. I look at them. But I still look and I ask people questions. And the most important thing I ask people is this question. And that is, I tell people that I look for 3 qualities. And what do you think? I ask them what they think they are. Most of them might get 1, or none, or they're sort of on the verge. But very rarely will somebody get me all 3. In fact, I don't think they ever did. And this is what I want for people that work in my organization. Above all, I want honesty. I want intelligence and the ability to learn. And I want to see passion. I want to see drive. I want to see hunger, that they're going to hang in there for the long run. That they're not going to jump ship because something gets hard, or because Ron's a jerk, or Ron walked in the office and said, you know what, I don't like what you did. You know, that's what I look for. So that's what's important. And once you're hired, here's what I suggest you do. Show up. 99% of success is showing up. We laugh, but it's true. You hire people, they may have great resume, you might think, but they don't show up. What is wrong with the world? They don't show up. And when they do show up, they're not adding value. They're taking value. They're taking their paycheck. Add value. Add value means that you accomplish what the job is. And then you need to be flexible. You don't want to argue and say, well, that's his job. That's not my job. And you must have a great attitude. You know, I manage by walking around. And again, I don't like parking lot talk. I hate it. And I love to see things in writing, and everybody that works directly for me better have a clipboard with a whole bunch of stuff on it, and half of that better be crossed out. The other half better be on a blackboard in front of them, and with the date of when that's going to be completed. And I am a hard boss, and I think Eric will tell you that, because guess what? I pay well. And that's why I pay well, because we're a pay-for-performance company, but I don't pay for non-performance, and it's an ongoing process. It all starts with hiring the right people. That's what gets our brand going. I think I'm out of time, but this is all just tips from the basement, Doctor. One last question. Does anybody know what the acronym TIP means besides my wife? Does anybody know what, you're giving tips. You go to restaurants, you give tips, right? Does anybody know what that means? To ensure proper, that's good. To ensure performance or proper service. Wish I had $1, I'd throw it at you. That's great. That's smart. And do you know where it came from? Where did it come from? You're close. You're close. It actually started in 14th century England, where people would go to the pub and know they were going to tip a few, so they throw a shilling at the guy in the barn and say, take care of my horse, and when I stumble out, take care of me. So that's where it came from. So you learned something. If nothing else, you walked out of here with that today. And then above else, and I mean this, marry the right person. preferably with a shopping disease, or get the right partner. Okay, well, thank you.